Lose yourself in a good book. The Board Gosh Energy Book Club.
Now, this year, of course, marks the centenary of the 1916 Rising, and there are many, many books related to the events of Easter week hitting the bookstores.
So we asked historian Donal Fallon to do the hard work for us and pick a selection of the ones that he thinks are worth reading. And he joins us now with his top 5. Donal, you're very welcome to Ireland. That's a bit of a tough task, actually, because there are a plethora of books, especially this year, new books published. There must be thousands of books out there about the Rising.
They are falling from the sky, you know, and you could joke we've managed to produce 1,916 books in the last couple of weeks alone.
But you've whittled down your top 5 for us.
I have. I've managed to select just 5 that I think are must-reads.
OK, the first one is by John Gibney. It's a history of the Easter Rising in 50 objects. Tell us about this.
I'm very interested in contrasting the centenary with the Golden Jubilee 50 years ago. And a big difference is we're talking about social history. Ordinary people. And John Gibney's book is a great example of how you do this. You know, he's taken very weird little objects from 100 years ago. For example, a cricket bat that died for Ireland. This was a cricket bat in the window of Elvery Sports Shop. The looters are running amok during the Rising, and this cricket bat took a bullet through the window. He's included that. He has a hat belonging to Sean Healy, a young 14-year-old volunteer who dies in the Rising. You know, all these little items, I think, give us the human side of the story. So
very
it's a
clever.
Beautifully produced
illustrated
illustrated book.
There was the history of the world in 100 objects, so it's obviously taken its lead from that.
Very similar in style, yeah. 50 very unusual objects, civilians, rebels, even British participants. You know, there's something there that covers every aspect of the story from a very human dimension.
That's a book for everyone? For
everyone.
Yeah,
It's a coffee table book, as they say.
Okay, lovely.
And you were talking about how we're doing it differently this time around, 50 years on. And a great example of that is how we're talking about the women who are involved, who for so long were written out of the history. And they fought, and they killed some of them, and they got injured, and they died. And Liz Gillis and Mary McAuliffe, we were there, 77 women of the Easter Rising. Now, I'm really looking forward to reading this, but what do you think yourself?
There are almost no monuments to women in Dublin. The few monuments that there are the fictional women, like Molly Malone.
Yeah.
And yet Markievicz has 3 monuments in a very small area. There's always been a focus on Markievicz, but the field is broadening now. And what's great about this is it's primarily female historians that are putting the focus onto women in the Rising. And Liz and Mary have done a fantastic book here. 77 women that were interned in Richmond Barracks after the Rising. And there's big names there, like Markievicz, but there's people that have fallen through the cracks of history as well. A great character, Kathleen Lynn, later set up a children's hospital. Margaret Skinner, you know, a school teacher.
Amazing woman,
Wounded in the Rising.
School teacher and a sniper. Amazing woman.
There's 2 careers.
I've met a few of them in my time, believe me. But,
Winnie Kearney from Belfast. She lives in the Falls Road in Belfast. She's James Connolly's secretary. They call her the typist with the Webley. She walks into the GPO with a typewriter and a Webley revolver. She's in there too. So great stories in that book.
OK, the third book you've chosen for us, Donal, is The GPO Garrison Easter Week 1916, a biographical dictionary by Jimmy Wren. What is this?
You know, you could host the entire Olympic Games in the GPO because apparently we managed to fit everyone's granddad in there 100 years ago. Who was actually in the GPO? Jimmy Wren has answered that question. Historians always said about 400 people. He's given us a larger list, about 570, but he names them all. He's an artist as well, little sketches of many of them. It's incredible to see who was there. Tony Macapaltis, there's a name nobody knows.
Tony Macapaltis, a Finn.
He's a sailor. He's in Dublin when the Rising breaks out, sympathetic with the cause of the rebels. He says, Russia, big country, eats Finland. England, big country, eats Ireland. And he goes into the GPO.
Wow.
And he's in this book. So the people that fall through the cracks of history are all there.
And great as well if you kind of suspect one of your distant ancestors might have been involved, you can go through, because it's alphabetical, isn't it?
Alphabetical.
So you can see...
Not so great, because I'd say there's a lot of families in Ireland who claim someone was there, and when they read this book, they won't find their granddad
There's
there.
a hugely unpopular appendix in this book. People who claim they were there, and no evidence can be found that they were. So there'll be a lot of pub rows over Jimmy Wren's book. But he says he was inspired to write it by a visit to the National Museum in the 1950s. So it's a long time, long time in the making.
Long time in the making. Labour of love. The fourth book you've chosen is Lorcan Collins' The Rising Handbook.
No one has done more, I think, to popularise the Rising than Lorcan Collins.
I would agree.
He set up the 1916 walking tour in 1996, 20 years ago, and he has been really on about nothing but the 1916 Rising since 1996. He was responsible for the 16 Live series of biographies on the leaders of the Rising. But this is a great book because, again, it will bust many myths and it will end many rows. You know, he goes through the Rising looking at, you know, what weapons did the volunteers have? Children at the moment, school children, they know this thing. inside out.
Yes.
And the questions that they're asking parents are so detailed.
We were just having that discussion. I think this generation of children will be better educated in relation to the Rising than we were, or maybe even our parents
Yes.
were. And it's wonderful to see.
They know more about the Rising than Pierce at this stage.
And they're so passionate about
Yeah.
it as well. They really are, and they're getting into the history. They're getting into the history in a way that almost in the way that some kids are mad about dinosaurs. They're really into the details and all the technical stuff.
But the
about that.
questions, you know, what rifles were the volunteers using?
Yeah.
Where did they print the proclamation? What paper was it printed on? How many people were interned after the Rising? All of those questions are answered in Lorcan's book.
Okay. Well, tell us about Blood on the Rose. That's the final book you're after picking up.
For young children in particular, I think these are great books, these graphic novels. An uneducated person like myself might call them comic books.
Right.
They're
They are
not
graphic
comic
novels.
novels.
They're
As
graphic
an
novels.
adult who reads graphic novels, they're graphic novels. We've actually featured this and we asked some children to review it for us and they raved about it. They loved it.
Jerry's work is fantastic. He was an architect right into I think the second half of the 80s, and then he went into the business of these graphic novels, and he's done great ones on the Lockout, the War of Independence, right into the modern Troubles as well. Blood on the Rose is fantastic because it has the big moments of the Rising, you know, Joseph Mary Plunkett getting married in Kilmainham Jail, the Battle of Mount Street Bridge, but it also has the little human stories again. You know, the looters running amok on Sackville Street.
I have to say, it's wonderfully drawn as well.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a great sign of what can be done through that medium, and I hope we'll see more like it in the years ahead.
Donald, thank you very much for
Thank you,
coming in
Donald.
this morning. Very enlightening altogether. Much appreciated. Now, have you got a 1916 story? Well, we're looking for your 500-word stories, be they fact or fiction or family folklore, with a 1916 theme. The winning story will win a book club goodie bag versus tablet, and the winning story will also be published in the Irish Farmers Journal. To enter, send your 500-word story to irelandam@tv3.ie, or you can post them to Bord Gáis Energy Book Club, TV3, Westgate Business Park, Ballymount, Dublin 24, and make sure you get them into us by Friday, March the 25th.
Lose yourself in a good book. The Bord Gáis Energy Book Club.